Good morning, my friends. This is Josh Hendry with Mister Hen's Art Skills, and I am working again on the homework for Graphic Novel Pro with Jake Parker and Sean Crystal, part of the SVS crew there, the School for Story Visual Telling or Visual Storytelling. Yeah, that's right. So, this week we are working on designing characters and designing props and designing our setting, our the different elements that go in the world. And I have to say, this is probably one of the heavier lifts creatively. So I have some of my characters here sort of silhouetted. One of the things they talk about is silhouetting them. And I don't know if you could tell, but one of these characters has been worked on a whole lot more than the others, and that's Caden, my main character. I've worked out a lot of the details of kind of his profile before ever exploring these other characters. And the crazy part about this is the last couple weeks we've had a lot of snow, so it has been very easy to do homework now without the snow and going back to school and being on a regular work week. It's nowhere near as easy to get this work done, so I'm having to squeeze it into little tiny windows. One of the games that's played on the island is called Ringo, and it takes place in the water. I don't know if you can see these people in the water here kind of shooting a basket, and I'm still working out a lot of it. It takes place in the air, so you can see people flying, because once the balls get in here, then air players can come and scoop them up and bring them into this middle area. And they get points for scoring in here. There are points scored for scoring in here, and then the balls shoot out of here. And you've got a couple of land players that are playing on bikes in the rim, where people are not, where they don't have very many means. People just ride bikes. But in the pro league, they have like motorcycles and mechs and all kinds of things. Here on the rim, they don't have any watercrafts really. I don't think. Maybe they will. I don't know. I haven't really decided. And then the flying portion is obviously very fantastical. The idea that people are going to be able to fly to play this game, and especially with low-tech options, is a little bit in the fantasy realm, which is great. That's what I want it to be, but I haven't worked out what that looks like. I've thought about everything from like a little Link air glider, like from Tears of the Kingdom or whatever, to other versions of it. Like this one looks even like a bat. This one looks kind of like a dragonfly, butterfly, bird kind of wing setup. So yeah, I don't know how we're gonna work that out. One thing I was thinking about is the grill. This center portion, I want it to kind of be like funnel ball. I don't know if you remember that. If you're old like me, playgrounds used to have this weird thing on it where you could throw a ball up in the top, and then it would come out of one of three chutes out of the bottom, or it would funnel it down into one of these three little exit tubes. And each exit tube gave you different points. And funnel ball, I don't know that I'm going to do that in the game. I'm still working that out. But I was thinking the nicer technology, which would be harvested and pushed kind of towards the center of the island, might have been like a B-29 bomber cockpit. And I really like the way that this looks with the glass and being able to see it. And then the engine casing off of the B-29 plane could be the funnels that they come out of, or the exit tubes that they come out of. So I like that kind of idea for the pro teams, but I thought then for the four cities, like the most wealthiest, they probably would do a even more technologically advanced version of this, not made out of these parts, but probably with like LED lights and readout displays and all kinds of things, maybe advertisements on it. I don't know. So I've got that in stages, and then I thought, well, a low-tech version of that might be a whiskey barrel and some traffic cones that got cut open or cut off the tipped, and that would be a way to do like a low cost version. So I kind of like this idea of building it up. Obviously this is also a smaller version, so it makes sense for if you're not flying with like super fast gear, you could have a smaller target, and that might make sense. So these are just some of the things I'm thinking. This is kind of the court, an overhead view of the court. I'm kind of debating, do these goals that people are shooting in, do they happen to all four spots? Are there only two goals? I'm also trying to work out, once the the land players get the ball, what is their objective? I want them to go back to their side, but on a round circle, it's like, what is their side? And then I want them to have to throw it into kind of like a goal like this. So yeah, you guys weren't seeing that, but the land players, so basically the grill, is in the center. So you've got all the balls that kind of get released out in the water, and then these players grab them and try and shoot them into the baskets for points. Then the air players come and grab them out of the baskets and try and deliver them to the grill, which is in the center. And then it shoots the ball out, and the land players, there are only 2 land players, but they kind of have to hope that it comes out towards them or race to get it if it goes towards another person. But they're going to grab that. And these balls look a little bit bigger than they actually should be. They probably should be able to fit about like a softball, but it's a bouncy ball. It's going to look kind of like a cross between a basketball and a softball and a volleyball, sort of all mixed together. So something that these, once you get old enough, you should be able to palm it pretty easily. So I've even thought about the idea of having like a lacrosse stick, a cross, or a net stick for them to be able to scoop out of the water. I've even thought about having this water portion, especially in the pro level, be like a whirlpool where the water washes around in a certain direction, so the balls don't just stay put floating. They're kind of moving. So that would mimic the storms that happen on the island and bring the technology to the island. So I kind of like that. Thought that was cool. Here I was working on a different version where I was thinking maybe the kids would be on a zip line, which if they were on a zip line, it would be very hard, to get the ball out of the net and then jump down and go. So I thought, well, if you had this huge basket that they were throwing it into and it came down into an actual basketball kind of goal, that could be kind of cool. Obviously they would have separated this basket from the backboard, and having a score up here for each time, they score here, but then also scoring here. There's lots of opportunities to score. People are going to be betting on the games, like all different kinds of things that, like, spectators in the pro, like, they come in with like a little, digital device, and they're able to bet on all different varieties and aspects of the game, from, the normal betting stuff, like who's going to win by how much, to even who's going to score the most water points, or which exit tube is the next ball going to come out of. I mean, people could bet on anything within the game as long as they get their bet in before that event takes place in the game. They have a chance to make more rings, and rings are kind of like the money system within the society here on the island. So Ringo is like people go around a ring, right? That's the simple one, but then it's also an opportunity to make more rings because you can bet on so many different aspects of the game. So it is also called mall ball by people who play because as you get further along, it gets a little bit more and more dangerous, and the stakes get a little bit higher, so people take it more seriously, and it gets a little bit more dangerous or violent. So that's what we're working on. So I'm not sure exactly what I want to work on. Maybe thinking of some of the technology that's used for the game. By the way, I thought I loved Copic markers, but I have refilled these now, and I have learned that they get really soupy in their age and can just spill out ink like crazy, which if you're doing any kind of precision work is completely unacceptable. So they advertise that you can refill them with ink, but if you don't get that right, you can totally ruin a piece. Obviously, I'm just doing sketches and stuff, but I'm not a huge fan of refilling the Copic markers, but they're so expensive. Not a huge fan of the entry-level price of getting a marker either, so I don't know if there's a better solution out there. If there is, please feel free to comment below. I would definitely appreciate the help. So let's just think about the glider for a moment. Okay, so if I'm thinking along Link's terms, he had these kind of like little bars that came down like this so that he could grab onto each handle. I guess he had like a cross piece or something. I don't know the structure of it exactly. And I don't know how seriously they thought about the structure of it. I watched YouTube for a little bit and saw somebody who built one that looked very realistic in it. There's no way that you're going to be able to glide with something that size unless you weigh like the weight of a feather. So this again would be very fantastical and fantasiacal. I guess I was thinking in my mind that I would create a sport that kind of could actually be played, because the fantasy element of this wasn't going to be the technology, so to speak. Like, it was going to actually, in my mind, it was going to be able to do what you would expect it to do. There are fantasy elements of this, but that wasn't going to be the portion that I explored or used. So, I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about that. I don't know how badly I want to stray from that, because it is a fantastic world. It's not realistic. And so, at what point, is it okay to bend the rules of physics in order to accommodate the story? I had not intended to really bend the rules of physics. So, I don't know. I don't know. That's an interesting thing to be confronted with. You've got a really cool idea in your head, but you have to somehow reconcile it with the tone and the feeling of your story, and make sure that nobody's kind of feeling like, wait, that shouldn't fit or that shouldn't happen. The rest of the world doesn't let me believe that that could be happening or real. So it's kind of like, watching One Piece. It's sort of like, it took me a while because I didn't read the graphic novels. I didn't read the comics. And I didn't watch the cartoon. I watched the actual one on Netflix, which I know a lot of One Piece fans were not super happy with. Some of them were, but there were plenty who felt like it was missing some really important things. But for me, that was my entry point to One Piece. And it took me a good while, and I'm still not sure I totally get the physics of that world. And what I mean by that is, One Piece can do things that we know are absolutely impossible, right? But people who are not like One Piece don't have his particular ability, right? They might have a different kind of ability that also bends the laws of physics. And then there may be people that can't bend the laws of physics at all. And so that is the part that I don't know yet. And probably longtime fans of it can really understand and be able to explain it. But if you're just entering into the world, it's really hard to understand exactly what game we're playing. And I think people always are going to be trying to figure out, okay, what are the rules of this world? What can I expect to see? Or they want to be immersed in it. They want to have an understanding of it. But if you don't give them the answers that they expect to have to orient themselves properly in your world, I think you run the risk of losing people very quickly. Because when people feel disoriented, it's not a comfortable feeling. And so I think for my book, I want people to really be interested in, why are they playing with all salvage stuff? Why does it all look like flotsam and junk and mess? Which it is, especially along the rim and the border towns. This is their only means of gathering technology, is when ships wreck or storms come in and blow in flotsam up on the beaches. People run out to harvest whatever they can get, and then they take whatever they can get and they incorporate it into their life somehow. That's why there can be a basketball goal on the island. It washed up off of a cargo ship or something that was carrying sporting equipment, from one country to the next, and it got shipwrecked, and all of the cargo was displaced. Some of it floats, some of it sinks, but they have ways to harvest all of that and bring it ashore and then use it. So that's one of the rules of the world I've created. Well, if you're going to be that realistic with now that's certainly fantasical that you're going to have an island that could have that happen. That is the fantasy portion of it. But then my intent was that everything else about it would be pretty realistic and believable. And so maybe that's a weird thing to think you can do, but I thought when I started this project that I would be able to do that. I just realized I really botched that, so now I've just created this unique design to make it look a little bit more believable. So let's see. Yeah, because they've got to either be able to fly or glide. Now the other thing I was thinking is maybe they could be on a pulley system, right? I used to go to summer camp and we had a zip line. They had this cool pulley system. And then yep. So you had this kind of cool little deal that clipped on. Yeah. And then somebody could hang from that. Okay, so then somebody would have their hand holding on here, kind of rocking back, like so. Forgive my horrible anatomy. They've got this, they're holding the ball in this hand. This is supporting their weight, so they're kind of hanging on like this. We got one leg kicked up, one leg kicked down. We were like that. Yeah, there we go, something like that, right? Alright, so it would be something sort of like that, where they're scooting along. Now, maybe there is enough technology for them to have a motor in this thing that would bring them back up. That would make sense in terms of actually physically being possible. Okay, so you got your carabiner or whatever hooked onto your harness, whatever that is. Okay. Yeah, and those harnesses could definitely have come off of the ships at some point. You can have any kind of technology pretty much that would be on a cargo ship could have landed on the ocean, or it could have landed on the island, sorry. Could have been lost in the ocean. So any kind of cargo that might have been lost on the ocean is pretty much fair game to have washed up and be used. However, the nicest tech doesn't stay on the outer rim. So if it's like computers or things like that that is super advanced, those things move on to the bigger cities, and then they use that to build their cities. So they get the choice. The choice flotsam, but over the years they've also been able to develop and create their own because of studying the tech that comes along. So there, that's kind of like a small dodgeball size ball, which is a little bit more kind of what I had in mind for the size of this. And I'm just drawing a Caden-like-esque figure just for now, just to kind of figure this out. Yeah, so that could be possible. And yes, this little leg is looking very dwarfy compared to the other leg. That's fine. For the purpose of this, that is totally okay. So come down. It's going to have to throw it into the pan. See, I think if you had this, if this were the system and they were going to shoot it, you would have to have their stopping point be on the outside of the grill. Like it would have to stop. Oh, maybe you could just have a stopper right here. And it would stop. Like you could have a spring-loaded stopper or something like that. right? And that's just clamped on there with a couple of, you just have a nice metal belt, and you got this big old stopper here that kind of squishes and gets smaller to slow them down. So you slam into that, and then that last slam allows you to kind of swing and get out over the grill and drop the ball in. That could work, but this is going to have to be anchored right at the grill. And that's going to be a challenge. So this is Winters Park, which is built with Raleigh Winters winning. So it is kind of one of the nice things on the island that the kids have to play at, is a park. So there is a little bit of money invested in this. There would be a little bit of technology available for it. Certainly not like the border towns or the inner island, but I have to think about how we're gonna do the grill and anchor that into so now we need that. It's 3, so you could have kind of like it almost have to be like a tripod of sorts. That's kind of weird. I think it's better to have 4 exits on 4 exit tubes. Is the only way that makes sense to me. So if the grill were an overhead shot, you got exit tube 1 and 2, exit tube 2 and 3, like that, and then yeah, that's the only thing that makes sense for this. So this is that, and then you'll probably have a point in the center. So then you could have a structure. They would need to come in. Well, they could come in over this way. So if you had like some kind of structure here, 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 and here. So then out here would be a physical structure that came up. It would have to be pretty high. Those would have to be pretty big supports. So think like a telephone pole kind of size maybe. Here, yeah. So here. Yeah. So now at this point when I'm thinking of this, I hop online and go, okay, what in the world can I look at to help me figure this thing out? And the one thing I could think of is zip lines. So if I go online and I take a little look at zip lines, that will probably help me. And probably something more specific like zip line construction might be a good idea. Let's see what we get with zip line construction. Zip line construction. Okay, let's do images and oh my. Okay. Yep. Okay, so the ending is cool. They have a way to pull you back up with a crank reel up at the top. So that's really cool. So you could have a crank reel basically connected to this that follows. So it would crank, the crank for it would be all the way back up at the top. I really like that idea. I wonder the ending point. So they have a lot about the starting point. The ending point. Okay. Yeah, this is interesting because the ending point has to be a single pole with a platform. So then from the platform, they would be able to drop it down into a bigger bowl. So you would have like a big platform like this. You would have it wrapped with a cushion like this. You would have the anchor for the zip line kind of positioned here. So the zip line would be like this, coming out, okay? And wow, okay. So you'd come in, yeah, so this would become like a, say this got anchored right in here, like so. Yeah, probably something like this. So this is going to be a nice big pole. It's going to be like, yeah, something very substantial. Then there's going to be like a really big kind of like cushion here, and it's going to be tied on with straps like so. And then probably on the rim it's going to be tied up with like fishing rope or something like that, something really more less expensive, not as polished of a technology. So just some rope that they were able to find and bind this thing onto the pole. Okay. Got that. And then you just got this like round deck that they kind of land on. So you get slammed in. Of course, the stopper probably would have to be further back, but at least for this idea, this can work. We want to give them a nice little landing space so it doesn't feel like they're in too much danger. Yeah, so they should be able to land on the deck. Okay, so the boards would run directly across, like so. Okay, that's cool. That even looks like a pirate ship, which is kind of good for the history of the story. There is some pirate stuff that happened years ago, so that might work, making this look like a ship. Okay, so then you've got that. And then down below, now you've got the bucket, or the goal, or the grill. So this would then go down in the center of your bucket or your grill. Something like that could definitely work. You could do a little carve out here for the ball to go in. So you could drop it down in that hole and then it would drop down. That could be kind of cool. See if we can get this guy worked out here. I was way off. That looks way better. Well, I'm a dork. Okay, let's see if we can darken this in and make this stand out a little bit more so it's not visually confusing for folks, although it'll probably still be visually confusing because I definitely botched it. That's fine. Yeah, yeah. That's fine. It's no problem. Let's do it this way. See, we're lined up there. Ooh, easy there, cheesy peasy. There you go. Yeah. Well, that's fine. Okay. We got these cables wrapped around this cushioning. I mean, imagine this game being played with flying machines, how many wrecks you could have, and why you would want, new technology to protect you or to keep you safe, and how it would end up being called mall ball. I mean, it's interesting because people watch sport for the game, but they also watch it for the action. And you look at the sports that are very popular. American football, obviously an extremely violent sport. I've even heard people who watch like races like NASCAR and stuff go, I love seeing the wrecks, and it's like, good grief. We have this interesting fascination with watching people go all out. Like MMA is an extremely popular sport. I enjoy watching it, but sometimes you're watching it and you go like these poor guys. I mean, how can you endure this fight after fight after fight? And they can't. The truth is, they really can't. They pay a very high price for combat sport like that. But even in the NFL, with all the padding and everything, it just takes such a huge toll. And so I'm not going. There is a portion of that within this story. Obviously, it's called mall ball because it can be extremely costly physically, and some of the technology on the island counteracts that. But I don't want to get too far into the story because I haven't worked out details yet for some of these things, and I don't want to start blabbing about stuff that I haven't really figured out yet. Sorry if my drawing went off the page there. Okay, something like that. So hopefully that works. The one thing I love about this is that in my very, very early sketches that I was drawing to kind of depict that there was an arena for sport, there was always a flag, and I always had the flag right in the middle of the arena. And it's so interesting because if I stick with this design as the solution, that gives me a massive like flagpole opportunity. You just run this straight up in the middle, and then everything revolves around that iconic flagpole. So, and then everything rotates. The whole ring goes around that. So when you're talking about visual appeal and that kind of thing, that puts the... So here was the solution previously. Okay, I need 4 posts and a platform and everything. And then I'm like, that just seems so convoluted. And then just a little bit of searching online for solutions for the end of a zip line, realize that a big tree with a platform at the bottom is the solution. And then this guy needs some supports underneath him. And then all of a sudden, some of the things that were a little bit more of an enigma for me started to work themselves out. So it's just cool to be able to grab information super quick to help you with your ideas. Super nice. Somebody's already thought through these things that I'm thinking through right now. That's probably not the way that works. You probably don't want to put 2 bolts side by side on a piece of wood like that, but hey, for now we'll let it ride. Yep. So you have some blocks that kind of anchor that guy on there pretty good. So something to that effect might be all right. They might have something, since this was designed by a former pro player, they might have some good substantial hardware to put on here. That could be so. But yeah. And then I think for the players, probably what they would need to do is drop the ball. They would have to time their throw and drop it in to get it in successfully. I don't think we want to have a hole through the platform because all the support beams and structure is under there. So your only access point for a shot would be right here. So that's pretty interesting to think about. But we might even make the basin a little bit bigger. You know, so that even if you had stopped and were standing up here, you could still throw it down and get it in there. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I'm not completely upset with all of that. I think that that's probably all the time I have for today. I don't think the glider idea is going to be super realistic enough for kind of my vision for this. Wanting to create something a little bit more physics oriented or believable, and allow the fantasy portion to come in different areas than that, I think is going to prevent me from probably using the gliders at this point, because there will be pro players that have some pretty serious technology, and I want the technology to be what allows people to do these mystical and amazing things, to be able to fly like on a hover thing with real tech attached to it is much more realistic. So this is just kind of like kids getting the chance to sort of get their timing down on a low-tech option. I think makes sense for Rim Ringo. So we'll call this Rim Ringo. Like so. We'll go ahead and sign this puppy for today. All right. And that's good enough for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will try to do this daily as long as the schedule permits. So thank you so much for joining. And as always, have a great day.